All right, now I have the microphone on. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry for starting so late. As always, just some technical issues. I need to change one more quick setting, and then I'll be ready to go. Where is it? There we go. All right, so I see Jeff Painter, Randy, how you doing? And Thomas Kale from Sweden, awesome. Plato, good to see you. And Liston says, hi, Rob, I enjoyed your star trail images. Make interesting composition of the tree or building with Polaris and the star trails as a major component is very difficult. And yeah, I saw your comment, actually. I think you left a comment about that on one of the videos. Yeah, I don't know anything about doing star trails or star astrophotography in the southern hemisphere. I imagine it's a little different, particularly just setting up, right? And the stars you might see. Annette's here. Good to see you. And let's see. Let me scroll down. APSC, I don't know what that conversation is. John Thomas, good to see you. And Thomas is here. I did set my clock. I'm just starting late. Gosh, almost 20 minutes. Unbelievable. Anyhow, Jason is here from Philippines. Okay, so I figured out a couple of things. The chat section now doesn't just as soon as I say that, it scrolls, but it shouldn't be automatically scrolling. So hopefully I won't miss any comments or questions people have. I hope everybody can see and hear me okay. All my blinkies are going in the right order. So if you guys have been following me on my Flickr or Instagram, you know I've been doing a lot of astrophotography lately, or doing my best at it, and playing with the fisheye lens a lot. I've been having a lot of fun with that. And I've made a couple of videos on the fisheye lens and also on the DxO Photolab 6, which I'm using now. And I'm going to try and do some more live streams and or videos and tutorials for Photolab 6. I also have a Nik collection now that's going to be coming. And I've been playing with that the last couple of weeks, doing different things. It's more of a creative tool, but I'm going to focus probably on the black and white part, the Silver Effects Pro, and also the HDR effects, which the HDR feature in Nik collection is really good. Actually, it creates a very realistic image, or you can get more surreal if you want. But I think it does a better job than the HDR built into Lightroom. And I'll give some examples of that, you know, in upcoming videos. I'm just kind of giving an update what I'm going to be doing. Let's see. Also something called Viewpoint 4, which is a perspective correction tool, which also generally does a better job than Lightroom. They're about the same in some cases, but they've made some improvements in Viewpoint 4 that you can't do as far as perspective corrections in Lightroom. So, and I'm just comparing to Lightroom because that's the only other tool I have that has any kind of distortion, perspective correction type things built in. And of course, the DxO Photolab 6 now has the D Prime XD, which it does squeeze out a tiny bit more detail. And I'll have to test it on some more images. I think that would come more into play like for birds in flight type photography, where you really want to try to get that extra fine detail out of the feathers. For that, it's doing a slightly better job, but it's not a major improvement. I'd say, you know, when you combine it with the other tools available that are new in Photolab 6, if you have Photolab 5, I think it's like $99 to upgrade. You know, that's going to be your call. I wouldn't say it's a mandatory upgrade. So much as Photolab 4 to Photolab 5, I thought was a pretty significant upgrade, which, you know, I did last year. And this year, I probably would upgrade it anyway for the extra features that it has, particularly the viewpoint for my professional work. But I think all of the core tools, the deep prime and the other editing tools, are still there in Photolab 5 that you can still get fantastic images out of it. So, from just a simple editing standpoint, I think the upgrade is maybe not worth it quite as much, unless you really want to get that extra detail in the deep prime and some. There's some other cataloging type things and exit data. I mean, there's definitely some improvements there. But if you don't have Photolab at all, it is my preferred editor of choice, definitely. David says that I'm frozen right now. I don't know why that would be. Everything should be in order on my end, unless my internet's being slow. But let me see. Okay, so it's just David for now. Druid's tried it for birds. It sometimes does a good job and sometimes messes up the fine detail in the feathers. Also found that smart lighting also can add some color artifacts. Okay. I've not seen that in my images with the smart lighting, but you put it on low, and then I use the highlight contrast sliders, to adjust the exposure the way I want it anyway. The smart lighting, my default setting is just low, and then I adjust it from there using the sliders. I found cranking up smart lighting to medium or high, depending on the image, but particularly high contrast images, it starts to look a little bit flat to me. So I try to use it minimally, right? Because it's basically an AI tool, right? To try and balance the highlights and shadows. And AI, as good as it is, it's never does what I want, so to speak, because what it's thinking, what I'm thinking is for lighting can be very different. In fact, I've been doing some not portrait, but yeah, I guess they're portrait. I've been doing some portraits and stuff where I'm actually making some subtle but significant changes in my editing for portraits, where I lighten up the subject itself separately from the background, and that's made a big difference. A little tip I picked up from Joe Edelman, actually, and I do want to talk to Joe about some stuff. We'll talk about that later once I kind of get his feedback on it. But Joe Edelman is one of the best, most experienced photographers I know, and has produced fantastic work with particularly Micro Four Thirds cameras. And he's since switched to Sony for a lot of his work, but it really has no bearing on the quality of his work, so to speak. His skill set is so high in his experience that no matter what camera he uses, he's going to get great results. That said, let me see what else is going on. Everyone's saying everything's good, so must be just David for today. But good to see you, David. We had a good photo walk yesterday over at Manassas Battlefield Park. In fact, I should probably share one of those images. I don't know. This doesn't work. What if I drag this down to this screen? and do this. Because I can talk about some of these images. Some of my changes that I do in editing now, particularly with people. If I change, oh, there we go. So just a quick look at this one, for example. This image on the left was taken by one of the members of the photography club while I was out there. Her Instagram handle's down there, Sleep Patternless. But I think she took this image with her cell phone, or she also has a Nikon D3. But either way, the image on the left is pretty much what she sent to me. And then the image on the right, just above me here, is what I did in terms of editing. So it's just a lot more muted colors and a little more contrast, basically. But what's significant about this image is if I just edit everything globally, meaning made adjustments to highlight, shadows, colors, and everything on a global basis, I would have been way too dark. So I used the brush selection tool in DxO or Photolab and brightened myself from the background. So I'm actually about a stop and a half brighter in this image above me than I am in the image on the left compared to the background. And it might be obvious, if you look at me compared to the background here, the background's actually a little bit brighter. And then in this image, we're a little bit closer and I'm a little bit brighter than the background. So I'm separating the subject, in this case me, from the background using light, right? Or difference in exposure. So that's something new I'm doing in my editing that I've never done before. Let me see if there's another example of that in here. Yeah, this is sort of an example. This one and this one. This was some benefit concert I did with David, actually. And the player here, it's very subtle. The player is probably only about a half a stop brighter than he otherwise normally would have been. But I just did the selection tool and selected him out from the background, then lowered the exposure or brightened the I made the difference in exposure about a half a stop. And it's very subtle. It's hard to see unless I do a side by side. Unfortunately, I'll see if I can pull that up later if this interests anybody at all. I don't know, but it's definitely made a difference in my editing. Like for example, here, definitely this player now is darker than they otherwise normally been, and this person is a little bit brighter than the rest of the scene. Another very subtle change. And see if there's anything else that's obvious. No, then I get into my Astro. So it's very new. It's very new. I've only been doing this the last couple of weeks. But on my Flickr page, I got my normal photos that I take, like these Astros and fisheye. And then I have these comparison type things. And, I do that for educational purposes, right? For people that want to see differences or changes or, like this is simply a comparison shot, right? Where we look at the 4 different lighting setups I had for when I was using the LED lighting. And I did a video showing how I took these pictures using the LED lighting. So if you haven't seen that, I got a lot of good feedback on that one. And Oh, Soft Fun is here. How are you? And System Mature says he uses the Rotolite and will also do flash, but a powerful battery unit for this to work. Yeah, yeah. With the LED lighting, I get about 4 hours on the LED panel and about 2 hours on the studio light. It's a 60-watt LED, and that's using two NPF 970s, which I think are 6 or 7,000 milliamps each. I mean, you can never believe the ratings they say on these batteries. When you buy generic anyway. Because I just bought some generic NPFs for them, and they're brand new, so they're working well for now. We'll see over time how much life I get out of them. With generics, you never know. Yeah, my Astro shots, Randy's talking about, they look like something out of Star Wars. I'll talk about a couple of these. Let me see if the exif date is in here. It is. Oh, it's not. Well, a little bit is. 30 seconds, ISO 1600. This was the 4mm fisheye. So it was at f2.8. And in the wintertime, the Milky Way is not quite as bright or have as much color. It's a little bit more muted, but you can see it in here, right up in here. And that was the best I could do for now. Because with the 4mm fisheye, you can get about 30-second exposure time at ISO 1600. If you want to use a lower ISO, you're going to have to you can't make your exposure time any longer than that. Otherwise, you start to get star trails. And if you want to do star trails, I use the live comp feature, which is pretty awesome. Let's see if I have one of those in here. Yeah, like this one. This is a 3-hour live comp. So I set the camera up, same settings, I believe, f2.8, 30 seconds, ISO 1600. And this is actually more of a composite because I exposed for the trees separately from the star trails. Because otherwise the trees would be almost a silhouette and too dark to see. So I took 2 exposures, and one was for the trees and the lighting there down below, down in here. And then it's a little obvious, but you can see my blending here. This tree's a little bit dark on the top. I didn't blend it quite as well as I could have. But this is a separate exposure from the star trails. And then the live comp just sat there for 3 hours and just ran. So that was a lot of fun. This is at my sister's house, and you have to find Polaris, right, which is right here in the middle. And there's lots of guides online how to find Polaris. But if you just have a compass in your phone, you can and it's calibrated, of course, or a GPS app, it'll tell you exactly where north is. And then you just have to figure out based on where you are on the Earth, how much you have to point up or down to get right to the Polaris. But if you can look north, and then there's a couple of other stars that'll help guide you to find where Polaris is. I think it's the Little Dipper. You kind of just come down and go right, at least from where I am on this Earth, right? And and then you can get the nice circular star trails. Some people like the star trails to be just diagonal, right? Where you would just kind of point your camera east or west. Then you get these diagonal arc-like star trails. I might try that. It's that could be fun too. And let me go back. And Soft Fun is asking if the OM5 is just a rebadged EM1 Mark III. Basically, yeah, it's a baby EM1 Mark III with a few trimmings for whatever reason. There are a couple of things that are significantly different than the M1 Mark III, other than just the body, right? The M1 Mark III is an all metal, more durable camera in that respect. If the metal's more durable, I don't know, but technically, I think it should be. Larger battery in the M1 Mark III, right? So you're going to get at least double, if not triple, the battery life in real life in practice. And also the USB port, you have a USB-C on the M1 Mark III and only a USB 2 or micro USB on the OM5. So it sort of takes away using the camera while you're charging it, or just being able to use the camera off a power bank. I don't think the M1 Mark III charges and runs the camera at the same time. You have to pick one. Do you want to charge the camera, or do you want to run the camera off a USB charger? I'm not sure about the OM1 if it charges and runs the camera at the same time, but probably not. You probably have to pick one. But it doesn't matter. Once you're attached to a power bank, you don't really care about the internal battery anyway. But that's the key difference between the two. And then a few trimmings on the shutter speeds, pro capture. They're still there. It's just trimmed down a little bit. You don't get quite as many frames per second, or capture as many. It's just, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same on the pro capture, and but you do get the new IBIS system, so you can get the seven stops or 7.5 stops, and you get the handheld high-res shot mode and Starry Sky AF, which recently has been pretty handy for me, and Live ND, but that's trimmed down to an ND4 instead of ND5, I think, is in the M1. So like I said, it's basically a baby EM1 III. I don't think the micro USB thing is as big a deal as people are making it out to be. I know that's been a major point that people point out. It's been brought up, I think, more than any other difference from the EM1 Mark III. It's been brought up more than anything else about the camera, that it lacks a USB-C port. And like I said, to me, it's like, other than powering the camera from a external source, what do you really lose? You might lose a little bit of tethering and some other data capabilities, but they used to do tethering with micro USB in the M5 Mark II. So I think the lack of tethering is just a conscious choice, because it's not a studio camera in terms of marketing, so they just didn't bother to use it. So with all that said, you're getting a pretty powerful camera in a very small package. And if I didn't already have an OM1 or an EM1 Mark III, I wouldn't see a need to upgrade. If I only had the EM5 Mark III, if that was my only camera, I would seriously consider getting that, because the price point is pretty good. It's pretty much the same as it was when the M5 Mark III came out. But it's not my only camera, right? The M5 Mark III. I have the OM1, EM1 Mark III, and a plethora of other cameras that, the OM5 just doesn't fit in my bag for any, in terms of workflow or need. I just have no need for a camera like that. But I hope this new marketing strategy works. There's some that say that, the adventure wildlife market is huge, and this could attract a lot of new people into the OM system. And I hope that's true. And I hope that marketing is successful. But then there's legacy people like me that use the cameras professionally and really appreciated all the professional features that the Mark II series had, right? The M5 Mark II. And but that's just not how they're marketing the cameras anymore. And I suppose, I guess the other thing I've been hearing is about, it's using the same sensor, and until they start putting some serious new sensor tech out, I don't see a need to change the sensor. The 20 megapixel sensor that they've been using for the last 5 or 10 years, however long it's been, is fine. Sure, there's BSI and stacked type things like we have in the OM1, but those are features that really only matter a little bit, to some people. They're not a crazy feature or huge thing for most people. Sure, it allows us to get less rolling shutter and faster shutter speeds, but my God, I can't shoot at 50 frames per second. It just I just don't have a need for that. Once in a blue moon, it's kind of nice, like if I ever see a a hummingbird or a kingfisher diving for something where, something's happening so fast that every single frame you can capture is better than less. But that's rare. That's rare for me, to find those kinds of targets that would require 50 or 100 frames per second. And I guess there is some significant improvement in light and image quality when you're pushing the sensor. Certainly, I know the color's much better at higher ISOs in the OM1, and pushing the sensor for noise and things are better. How I can't quantify it. That's something I know Ben over at the Narrowband channel is working on. He's going to try and quantify the differences. Because in astrophotography and the kind of things he does, the differences in the sensor tech can be significant, and that's what he's going to look into, because he can quantify it. All I can do is just tell you subjectively that I feel like it's a little better, and I can see it when I'm pushing the images 3 stops, 5 stops. But for everyday photography, like I said, probably 99% of the people out there, I don't see much difference between my old EM10 Mark II and the OM1 when I'm just going out taking pictures, right? So Rotolight lasts for a couple hours working as LED on full power with 6 double. Oh, that's pretty good. 6 AA batteries. That's not bad at all. Certainly, certainly enough for most photo shoots, and then just put in another pack of batteries. I mean, nobody sits there and shoots for 2 hours straight without taking a couple of minute break, right? And yes, Polaris is slightly off the polar axis, meaning you won't get technically perfect round circles if you center Polaris, but close enough, right, to the naked eye. And yes, a good star app is useful. And yeah, there's not many clear skies in London, and light pollution is a problem. I know. I have to drive about an hour and a half to my sister's house to get relatively clear skies and with low light pollution. And if I want really dark skies, because she lives like in a Bordeaux 4, I think Bordeaux goes up to 9 or 10. She's in a 4. I live in a 9. So I can't see jack. I can barely see any stars until it's, really starts to get late at night. Where I live now. But an hour and a half's not a bad drive. And so that's where I'm going to go to do all my astrophotography is there, because you have to stay up all freaking night, because you're setting your timer for 3 hours to take a couple hundred images. And once the camera and the tracker's set up, there's nothing to do. You just go back in, take a nap, come back out, set up, pick another target. It's so funny. The very first night I went, I set up my tracker and I did my best to pick the target. I picked the wrong target because on the app, I was using Stellarium. It said which something nebula, and because I was using the phone horizontally, it was covering the target that I really wanted. So I picked this first target that was named which something, and I picked it. And then when I came out 3 hours later, my camera was pointing down at the ground because apparently went from here straight down below the horizon. And so I got lots of pictures of trees and grass, but not too many of stars. And the few images I captured, I don't even know if I got the right target. So the second image I got was of what was the second image? I think that was, yeah, that's the second image I got. I posted, which was Orion, and that came out pretty good. I didn't get too many good clean shots. I think I got maybe 40 or 50 images, and then I was only really able to use about 18 of them for stacking. And out of that, that's what you saw on Instagram and Flickr, is that image. And I didn't process it very well because I'm not that good at processing yet. I'm still fine-tuning my skill set there because it's very, very subjective when you're editing astrophotographies. There's not like a set, numbers for each slider, because you got to process the image, look at see how it looks, process it again, see how it looks, process it again. Everything is just subjective from point A to point B to point C to point D. For now, right now, for me, I can't. So it's gonna take me some more practice and more editing before I can probably make some sort of tutorial or demonstrate how I edit astrophotography photos, because there's more than one way to do it, and I'm just using one method right now, and it's working for me, but it's so subjective. Every single edit is different, and there's no one way to skin a cat, so to speak, or skin a potato, I'd rather say. And so I'm watching, and I'm going to try and put together a playlist off of Ben's channel that you guys can go through and learn how to set up your tracker, your camera, best ISO settings, how to edit the photos. He has several videos, but they're kind of buried in his channel and they're a little bit hard to find. So I'm going to put a playlist together and then share it with him so he can put the playlist on his own channel for more beginning, budding astrophotographers, right? Because the way his channel is now, he has everything on there from that's about astrophotography, and like half of it doesn't even apply to if you're using a regular camera. So I'm gonna try to organize his videos into a playlist that I think makes sense, share it with him, and he might have some additional videos he wants to add in or organize. But all this stuff is there. And then there's several other astrophotography channels. They're not using, Micro Four Thirds, but they do have lots of good, different ways of explaining how to find Polaris, how to align your tracker, how to edit photos. They all have their own style and method of teaching. So, just like my channel, right? If my teaching doesn't connect with you, it doesn't, right? It's just, and with Ben, if the way he teaches or presents something doesn't connect or work with the way you think, you can check out another channel. But for now, he's my main asset or repository for astrophotography knowledge, and the way he's teaching and showing things works for me. So That's what I'm going to do. And then Simmons says, I used to do video. I use a battery belt, so I never had a problem shooting for hours. Not sure if this can be done with any. Yeah, you'd have to set up a dummy battery that plugs into a power bank. That's what I do with for live streaming. Is I have a dummy battery hooked up to my EM10 Mark II, and that'll run as long as I want. Indefinitely, because it plugged into mains, but I could easily plug it into a power bank and I would easily get, I'm sure I would get 12 to 20 hours out of it. And Darko says, not to change the subject, but I'm thinking of WeMacro Auto Macro Rail. No, I've never looked into that. Sorry. I've tried macro for a little while, and time to time it's fun, but like I said, I have a hard time finding the little bugs and critters to do macro shots of, and they're moving. It's so hard just to find the subject. That, because I went out every day for about a week into my backyard looking for things to take pictures of, and only 2 or 3 times did I find something. And then after I got the shot, it wasn't even very good. It's either I misfocused or it didn't stack right or the lighting was bad. It's like, God, this is so hard. And then the end result is, even if it's a good picture, it's a picture of a bug, which I'm not a big fan of anyway. So I'm not saying I abandoned macro photography, but it's definitely not a genre that I'm into. As a lot of other people that take amazing images, like Rob Photos on Instagram and Ben's Small World. Those two use Olympus cameras, and I know Emily Taplin does some macro work. So those people, they love that stuff. But man, I was not into it as much. Yeah, people need to know they have the latest and greatest, even if they never use it. I don't even use the gear to the max. I try to explore everything it can do and see how far I can push things sometimes. But in real life, my everyday camera is a Pen F. That's a 6-year-old camera. I mean, most of the image I showed you, other than Astro stuff, was all on the Pen F. And I should get a drone. I need to learn to fly. I have a drone. I just never take it out. I don't even know how to fly it. I flew it in my house a little bit and almost busted it. And then I put it away and haven't touched it since. And no, I did not use the DF for Astro. But I do have a couple lenses that might work well with it if I want to do Astro. I have the 200 millimeter f4 for deeper sky objects, and I have the 105 f2.5, which I don't know. That lens is a little bit soft. I think there's some haze or something inside it. And then I have a 14 millimeter fisheye lens. I mean, it's not a full circular fisheye, but it's pretty distorted. That might be fun for some Milky Way shots. And the DF would be really good for that, for like single shot Milky Way type things. For deep sky type stuff, it's a tough call. I can't remember if it had an intervalometer built in. I believe it does. It does have an intervalometer. But I haven't tried it. I thought about it though. I thought about it with my 200 millimeter f4. It's, the vintage manual focus one. That's such a good lens. But I don't know how it would be for Astro. but I was thinking about it. But like I said, I gotta. My main problem now is, aligning my tracker. Oh my God, my tracker. My tracker. The reticle inside is off. So I'm gonna have to take it out one day and calibrate my reticle. It's definitely off. So that's causing some of the problems I'm having with my tracking. I'm not getting anywhere near enough keepers, and the and then finding targets and making sure everything's working right. So I still have a ways to go. My experience level is, I'm still in the infancy of astrophotography as far as my skill set. So I need to practice and go out a lot more. And I'm going to use my OM because I got the best lens, right? The 300 f4 for the deep sky stuff. Once I kind of get a feel and my experience level up, then I'm going to start trying other cameras. I have the DF, I have my S5, of course I have my Canon and Fuji's. I've got all the other cameras I can try, and it'd be interesting to see the kind of results I get with the different cameras. But I'm just not there yet, and I don't have any lenses for my S5. I got a 50 millimeter. That's not going to be good for anything. Astro, really, not deep sky. I see a lot of people use for full frame. I see a lot of people get away with an 85 millimeter, but that's still pretty wide. You can't really get close. From what I've seen so far, maybe it's a great lens for stuff. I don't know. Like I said, my experience level is not there yet to be able to comment what lens to use for different things in Astro. So we'll see. It'll come though, because I've got the bug. I've got the bug, and I'm really enjoying it because it's so rewarding. Because you put so much effort into it, and and then you get this image and you process it. So much work goes into it, but then the final result is just amazing. If you like stars, maybe you hate stars. Like, I'm not a big macro bug photographer, right? You can get amazing results, but I'm like, I don't want to see all that, but a star and nebulas and what's out there just fascinates me. And it's just so interesting to me. So again, it's just a genre thing, right? I just like Astro. I've got the bug for it. Oh, you miss your DF. Yeah. I almost took it out yesterday. Almost. I was this close to take it out with me to the on the photo walk, because I can put that DF and put the 51.8, the nifty 50 on it, and just get amazing shots from it. Oh, Adam, how are you? Adam Farb is here. Good to see you. And Lynn is here from the UK. Hello. Let's see. Oh my God, my chat is backed up to 10:20 a.m. And Basil likes DxO as well. Yeah, DxO is awesome. Let me scroll down. And I got so many questions in the comment sections of various videos that I need to get to. I know some people have been waiting a week, and I'm sorry about that. Questions I can answer off the top of my head, I answer right away. But then there's some very, very finite questions, like very specific questions, like, why is this grayed out? I'm like, oh, man, that's not always straightforward. I have to dig into the menu and play with different settings and see why something might be grayed out. And I just haven't had time to sit down and do that for some of you. Oh, darker like my Astra, thanks. And Randy's been doing drone stuff. Wow. Yeah, right along. Randy has a. I haven't caught any videos in about a month from your channel, but I know you've been posting. But Randy that has a YouTube channel here under the same name. And Walter is here. My goodness, hey Walter. Oh, you just got in. Cool. Walter, we're planning to go to, or he's already booked for Christmas lights show in Pennsylvania, Longwood Gardens, and it's still about a month out. But their ticketing system is, I mean, you can walk up, but there's no guarantee you can get in. So they have a ticketing system that you can buy online in advance for a certain time to be there. And I can't think that far out. It's just, I mean, I can think about a week ahead, of what I'm going to be doing, because things come up. Like I have 3 photo jobs next week. And that's all that's on my mind right now are these 3 jobs I got to do. But I'll make a decision, because I have to think about Ellie too. I have to bring her with me, and I found a hotel that accepts dogs. But you guys are thinking about getting in there about 2:30, so that means I have to leave her alone from 2:30 to late at night, and that's going to be a little awkward if I have to leave the park and come back. So that's going to dictate which hotel I pick too, because I have to find one that takes dogs, right? So there's some logistics problems there for me too. And I don't like to leave her alone more than 3 or 4 hours at a time. I can push 8 hours, but that's a tough call. So I have to look into other things, and I can't think about all that right now when I got other things lined up. Oh, okay. Anyway, that's what's going on with that, Walter. Corey is here. Good to see you. I mean, if it was just me by myself, I could probably commit almost right now, because I don't have to worry about the logistics with my dog. But I'd hate to plan and set everything up, and then, a week later, or when I get there, something's not right, and I can't do everything I wanted to do. So I could stay just the one night or stay 2 nights. I don't know. It's just complicated when you have to bring a dog to and leave them alone for any length of time. I mean, I've done it before when I went to Smoky Mountains, and I had to leave her alone, but I always could come right back, right? I was never more than 30 minutes away. And, for example, I'd go to I'd leave her in the hotel so I could go to the museum, because they don't allow pets. And then I would come back a couple hours later, and it was only 15, 20 minutes from the hotel. And I had a camera set up that I could check on her remotely from my phone. I'd set up something so I could keep an eye on her. So it's, there's just a lot of, anyway, like I said, you're making me think too hard now. I got to think about my job tomorrow, make sure I got batteries, memory cards, the right tripods, the right lighting, the right gimbal, because they're video jobs I got to do tomorrow or Monday and Tuesday. And there's a lot of things. And if I forget one thing, like if I forget to bring the right frickin' Arca Swiss plate, it makes it harder, or if not impossible sometimes, to do a job on site when you're missing one. I mean, it could be something as simple as oh my God, I forgot an Arca Swiss plate one time. And I had to sit there and hold the camera on the tripod very steadily and to finish the photo job, because it was just resting on top of the tripod. It wasn't actually mounted. Um, so I like to set everything up the day before, pack the bag, and then make sure, you know what I mean. Anyway, um, uh, the problem I have, I don't have anybody that can watch my dog while I'm away. If I could have my mom just come over and feed her, uh, for a day or two, that would be perfect. But she won't do it. Nobody will. Nobody. My sister won't do it. My mom won't do it. And I don't have any friends locally that can do it because she doesn't know them. Because she is not friendly to anybody but me. She's a one-person dog right now, unfortunately. Um, no matter how hard I try. I mean, my mom used to come over every day and feed her while I'm here. But when I'm not home, it's like murder, death, kill. She is not invited or allowed into my house or even in my yard if I'm not home. Nobody is. But when I'm home, I have some control. But even when I'm home, she's very protective. So, needless to say, my family is scared to death of her. Otherwise, that would be such a simple solution. I could just go for a day and a half or 2 days. My mom can feed her, let her out. That would be so simple. Because Pennsylvania is a short trip, right? If anything happens while I'm away, it's only a couple hours to come back. But anyway, enough about my dog and this trip. Let's see. Yeah, cats are a little bit easier because you can leave a pile of food in the bucket or whatever it is that is the litter box, and they're probably okay for a day or a day and a half. You can probably get away with it, but a dog, they have to go out and take care of business, and feeding them. Ellie, unfortunately, if I fill her bowl, it's empty. You know, she would not stop eating. I mean, I've never filled her bowl to the top, but the one half cup or cup that I put in, it is gone instantly, like in 30 seconds. She wolfs that down, and I'm afraid to leave anything more than a cup. I feed her like a half a cup 3 or 4 times a day, and she's still hungry. But that's the only way I can maintain her weight. If I give her more than that, she starts to gain weight, and the vet yells at me. Randy, that's right. Daylight savings. They need to pick one and just stick with it. And if they're gonna pick one, I wish they would just pick the standard time, world time, so everybody's on the same freaking clock. Yeah, cats are easy. Cats are easy, definitely. But I'm not a cat person. I'm more allergic to cats than I am dogs, and I'm allergic to dogs. But cats are really rough. I have a real hard time with them. Um, I'm good if I don't touch them and don't mess with them much. But if I had a cat living with me, wow, yeah, I would be in trouble. Because I know after a couple hours at my mom's house, because she has cats, I can't tolerate it. But okay, let me just skim something real quick. I wanted to talk about one other thing, and I can't remember what it was now. But I think that's it. Unless you guys have any other questions, we'll make it a short stream today, maybe. If you have any questions about Olympus or OM systems, or you want to talk about the OM5 more, I mean, it's not a camera I'm going to get because I just don't need it. And or you want to talk about my astrophotography experience a little bit and what I'm doing, the process. If you have any questions about that stuff, I'll be glad to help you. I can tell you that for gear, I'll talk a little bit more about Astro. Do I have recommended DaVinci Resolve tutorials? Let me check. I don't remember the guy's name, but I mean, there's so many things in DaVinci Resolve. If you just want a starter course, that's one thing. Let me pull up my YouTube real quick. Where are my subscriptions? I think I subscribe to them. Where's my... I didn't subscribe to them. Okay. I did not subscribe to them. I just search DaVinci Resolve tutorial. Maybe I'll see their face. No, not that guy. I think it's, yeah, this guy. How can I move that screen down? This guy here, learn color grading. I like this guy. He's pretty good for doing very specific things in DaVinci. I don't know if he has like a overall tutorial, like from start to finish. He probably does, but his thing is he does very specific things that you can do in DaVinci Resolve, and I think that's where you need to be, is, or that's probably what you're looking for, is more specific things. And this guy's very good. The other guy that's pretty good, but the problem with these other guys, for me, like Casey Ferris is good. He's really good, but the problem with a lot of the other tutorials on DaVinci Resolve, it's not them, it's me. They talk too fast. My God, they talk so fast and they go through things so fast. I have to watch it and pause it and watch it and pause it and go back. I have a hard time with their style because they're just young and they can talk fast. And I guess young people watching it are fine. They can keep up with these guys, but I cannot. Whereas the other guy, he's a little bit slower pace. He's more at my pace, right? That I can follow along. And but these other guys, Casey Ferris is good. I've watched this guy before, but those two guys, Casey Ferris and the other guy, those two I really like. I've run across a couple others that were good, but for when I really wanted to deep dive and really understand things in DaVinci Resolve, those two guys did a great job. And they didn't talk, well, the one guy doesn't talk super fast. Film Simplified, I'm not familiar with them. John Thomas says, do I have any thoughts on the 60 macro lens? I'm thinking of getting it. If you like doing macro, absolutely. There's no other lens. That's the best. It's not a lens that I own because, like I said, I never got into macro. But a lot of people use it for just like as a standard portrait lens. But it's a little tight to be kind of an everyday lens. Like it's not a 25 millimeter, right? The 60 is pretty tight. So it's a short telephoto. And if you do a lot of short telephoto work, it's a fine lens. So I'd say if you do portrait, short telephoto stuff, like, you know, some landscape and nature stuff, you can do short telephoto and wildlife. But, you know, obviously the specialty is for macro, and that's where it's best. And if you get into macro, definitely that is the lens. Robin Wong used it. And Emily Taplin uses it, and just every Olympus ambassador uses it, and they do amazing work. Ben Smallworld, he's not an ambassador, but he's definitely, you know, recognized by Olympus as one of the best in macro photography, and that's what he uses exclusively. So for macro work, I think hands down, that's the one to get. Now I know they have a 80 or 90 millimeter macro coming out, which, you know, is probably going to be awesome, but probably going to have an awesome price too, right? So you can get a 60 macro for like $400 on sale, $500, you know, relatively new, if not brand new. So I've never heard one bad thing about the 60 macro. The only thing that I've heard, and this is true for most macro lenses, I don't know of any that don't have this problem. But the problem that comes up is the focus stacking because of the breathing. The lens breathes a lot at close focusing distance. So you have to be extra meticulous with your stacking and how you set things up and the kind of images you can stack, but and have good stacking software. So I'd say, but I think that's true of every macro lens. But I've only heard about it more because I'm an Olympus guy, right? So I've heard about it more with the 60 macro than other lenses. But the consensus is true of most macro lenses. So I just wanted you to be aware of it, that you're going to have to deal with that, but you're not going to be able to solve that problem with another lens. They all do that, unfortunately. I'm sure there's some that don't, but you know, the general rule of thumb is you have to be very conscious of focus breathing when you're focus stacking with macro lenses. And Film Simplified is Casey Ferris and Jay Lipman. Okay. And yeah, lots of feedback on the 60. People love the 60 macro. And Walter brings up a good point. People use it for scanning slides and negatives and things. It's perfect for that too. And then Corey makes a point about the 30 macro. If you want to capture more of the environment, that whatever it is you're taking a picture of, you know, wider angle, you're going to see more, right? And then the system mature is confirming about the stacking settings, particularly when doing max close-up settings. So you have to watch the focus breathing. Mainly for fungi. Okay, yeah, definitely. For fungi, yeah, the 60 macro, immaculate, but also have good lighting. You know, like the LED lighting that I used was really good. I think I have a picture of it. Like this I used this image here. I just used the 40 to 150 with a macro extension tube. I shouldn't call it a macro extension tube. I just used an extension tube. But the key here is the lighting. I used that 10-inch soft panel, right? LED lighting from Suray that I did a video on recently. You get away with just using flash with a diffuser or even a handheld flashlight. You know, anything to introduce lighting makes a huge difference in the quality of the images that you capture. And hi, Tony from Missouri. Good to see you. Always good to see people coming in. I know. So let me finish my thoughts on the Astro stuff. Mark Wolf says, I have the 60 macro, which I bought for product photography. Until now, I haven't used it for that. But yeah, because it's a telephoto lens, basically. That would be hard for products where you need some distance. Unless it's jewelry and stuff, you could probably do. I feel the 25 1.7 that I use is just better, and I don't have to go back. Yeah, you don't have to back away as much. Yeah, 60 macro, you're going to have to get some distance. The 25 makes sense. The 25 makes more sense for general products that are like this big, right? Like camera size. But the 60, if you want to do product shots of a camera, say you'd have to get back pretty far. And it's not as practical for that. Definitely. And the advantage of using LED lighting is that you can actually see the potential resulting before you press the shutter button. Yes. Yeah, what you see is what you get, right? Because, ideally, you can have the camera on a tripod faced at your subject, like fungi in this case, and then you can move the LED lighting around and look at your live view and see what you get. And then once you get it right, push the shutter button, right? But yeah, continue to type any questions you have. But while you're doing that, I'll tell you a little bit more about my Astro setup. So I've switched to a new tripod. It's one that I already own, but I was using a Manfrotto 550 XB Pro or whatever. It's one I got from David actually for my photo jobs, and it's been great for that. But I've now switched it to do astrophotography work because when you mount the tracker with the counterweights, the camera, and the huge lenses, I was pushing the limits of what my Benro tripod could handle. My Benro tripod is up to 8.8 pounds. And the Manfrotto, I believe, is a 22-pound limit. So it's a huge difference in terms of stability. So I'm hoping that's going to help with my tracking. But for my paid work, like my photo jobs, 8.8 pounds is more than enough because usually all I have is the camera and a flash on a tripod. What I liked about the Manfrotto, though, is I could get up really high, and that's a little more useful in commercial spaces where the ceilings are really high. I can set the camera up higher, but it's not critical. It's not critical. And it's not that often that I get, 20, 30-foot ceilings, right? Usually I'm doing office spaces that are like 8 or 10-foot ceilings. The Benro's good enough for that. But the Manfrotto was really nice because I can get up a higher perspective. Because when you have these 30-foot ceilings, everything is higher. Counters are higher, the furniture and shelving and whatever else they have in space, everything is up higher. So being able to set the Manfrotto up, Manfrotto I think is about a foot higher, maybe. Feels like it's about a foot higher than the Benro does. And it was just a little more practical, but it was more than I needed 90% of the time. So I just switched. And because the difference in stability with my tracker is huge versus the difference in perspective is not that much between the two tripods. So I think that was a good trade. So I'm doing that. So be aware that if you're going to buy a tracker, like I have the Sky Adventurer 2i, you need a tripod that can support. I would get one that has a minimum 10 pounds, but maybe 20 pounds would be better. So you have more than enough. Because if you start, mounting battery packs and other things, the weight can get up there pretty quickly. And if you ever want to upgrade to a new tracker, you'll be able to handle the weight of the new tracker. You don't have to buy another freaking tripod, right? You can buy a new tracker and use the same tripod. So, because there are heavier trackers, a lot of them you buy the tripods together with it, but there's some in there in between that you can buy just the tracker, and assuming you already have the tripod. Now, the tracker that I have, the Sky Adventurer 2i, I will tell you that it's basically like shooting in manual mode for astrophotography. You have to do everything manually. Align Polaris, then find your target. If you want to calibrate everything is manual, but it's good. It's good for learning, right? Because it forces you to look in the sky and find your targets. And that's the main thing, finding targets. You have to find everything. So force you understand, where you are on the earth, what time of day and year it is. You have to do everything manually to get the best results. So you're learning everything. So if you're going to start out in Astro, I think the Sky Adventurer 2 is ideal for people just getting started because it forces you to learn the basics of astrophotography and that's the whole word, astrophotography. Because they got trackers that cost a little more that does everything automatic. You just use your app and say, okay, I want to take this target or take that target, and it does everything automatic. And then you spend 3 times as much, and then you can start to use heavier lenses and cameras, because at that point it becomes about weight, right? And having a tracker that can handle more weight accurately. But the first $1,000 you spend, you get all this automation involved. And you don't really learn anything, I don't think, about astrophotography. And to me, photography is about the experience and learning things. So I'm very content with starting out with the most basic tracker like the Sky Adventurer 2i, so that I can learn astrophotography, all the fundamentals first, before, if I get really into it, start buying these automated type things. Because you should see what Ben has, man. He just takes his phone out and the telescope starts, going in all different directions. It picks targets automatically throughout the night. Like it'll pick one target, then it'll automatically switch over to another target. He's got the setup. But there's no way I would just dive into that and not try to learn all the fundamentals, because that's part of the experience, right? Understanding everything, understanding your subject more, right? How far away it is, yada yada. there's a lot of interesting things, I think, that you can learn doing astrophotography about the universe. And my goodness, Rick is here. How are you, Rick? And the 60 macro, yeah, if you want one-to-one magnification, you get more working distance is basically the point here. So that allows you to use additional lighting if you want, and bring lighting in without interfering with without the lens interfering with shadows, causing shadows and things on the subject. Because with the 30 macro, your working distance is like this. So you don't have, as much flexibility with lighting as you would when you have a working distance like this to get the same magnification. So I think generally speaking, people prefer the 60 macro over the 30 macro, even though the magnification is the same. The working distance of the 60 macro gives you a lot more flexibility. But again, if you don't need perfect one-to-one magnification and you want a wider field of view but a very close-up shot, the 30 macro makes sense too. Whereas if you're going to rely totally on ambient light, even in ambient light, if you bring your lens up this close to get one-to-one magnification, you can introduce shadows, in an undesirable way, like maybe the shadows halfway through the subject, right? So that it's definitely another thing to think about if you're deciding between the two lenses. I've never heard of the Galactic Hunter channel. Yeah, I've never heard of them, but I need to get my skill set up a little bit higher so that I can do a competent interview, right? Because there's nothing worse than, I hate these interviews I see when the person interviewing the other person has no idea about the topic or subject, didn't do any due diligence or research, so it's not asking good questions. And so that's, it would be difficult for me to interview someone. When I have Ben on as a guest time to time, he does all the talking, and I can interject a couple of questions, but I know I've asked stupid questions and he answered them the best he can. But, before I start bringing on more guests that specialize in astro, I definitely need to get my skills set up. And really, Ben does it all anyway. So, but like, it doesn't hurt to have other voices in the conversations. That, like I said, it's all about how they communicate and how you connect with them. It's not about their competency level, right? It's about their ability to communicate. And then Alan Wallace is great for astro, but not an M43 shooter. Yeah, I notice a lot of other channels for astro. They shoot all different cameras, right? I see Canon and Sony a lot. I haven't seen any Nikon astro. I mean, I haven't run across any yet. I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't seen any Nikon astro shooters. I've seen the Canon and Sony guys, and then Ben is the Olympus guy. And then a lot of astro guys are all dedicated camera type astro cameras, where they're doing narrowband stuff like Ben does. And one day I'll get into that, maybe. We'll see. I'd like to do planetary type stuff too, like take a picture of Jupiter. But I probably need a much longer focal length. Maybe Saturn. I could probably do Saturn. it would just be a fuzzy Saturn ball with a ring. But yeah, planetary would be kind of fun too. But I just want to get a few nebulas down. Once I can get the nebulas down flat and consistently, the processing, well, the capture process, then the processing side, then maybe I'll move on to other types of targets. But it's the learning curve is pretty steep, but even steeper is gaining the practice and experience of doing it. It's nothing. It's nothing like regular, ambient type photography or flash photography. These things are like, the learning curve is there, but it's not so steep as, because you have the fundamentals already behind you. If you know how to shoot in manual mode, you pretty much have the basic fundamentals to go into almost any other type of photography genre. But with astrophotography, wow, man, it's a whole nother level. Because I haven't even talked about doing darks, dark flats, lights, bias, and how you do those kinds of lights and bias and because there's different ways to do each kind of bias or calibration frame. Which one is best? Because there's some debate about that as well, and I'm like, oh, God. So I just ask Ben. He tells me, but just because someone gives me an answer doesn't mean I understand it, So that's what I mean about you might get passed through the learning curve, but then to really understand everything that you've learned is a whole different level in astrophotography. You just can't, I just can't believe it, because I'm doing things and I'm getting results in my astro work and processing and capturing for all of that, right? But I don't understand why or how I'm able to do these things, I mean, I know the how, for example, but I don't know the why. Why is this better this way than doing it this way? I just don't understand it. I'm just doing it because that's what Ben told me to do. And I'm so there's a huge learning curve, but that understanding why you do these things is another thing. And it's very different than normal photography, doing astrophotography. Normal photography, like I said, you have a basic understanding of exposure. Shooting in manual mode, for example, you're set for most things. You just have to develop your experience, right? And I don't want to take anything away from the business side of photography for marketing and composition. There's a lot of artistic things as well. I mean, there's a lot of things there that in photography side that, yeah, there's a huge space there as well. But from a technical standpoint, from pure technicality, technical shooting, my God, Astro is just crazy hard. Dark sky is a real asset. I wheel my telescope out the circle I live on, but I'm lucky to visually see. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm not, like I said, I'm lucky that I can travel by car to a spot that has good dark skies. But, Ben just moved out to a place where there's dark skies. So he's set. He's in a low Bortle 4. So he's pretty much set. I mean, it's not a Bortle 2, but still, that's really good to be able to just tip out your back door and take some astro shots right in your backyard. That is the ultimate backyard astrophotography. But I only have to drive about an hour and a half to have that kind of convenience, and that's not bad because like it's been cloudy the last few days and now the moon is kind of high up in the sky, so I got another week or so probably before I can go back out again and get really good shots anyway, so I don't have to travel like this every night. But Ben could just tip out his back door any night and do astro. So nice. Oh my God, nearly a Bortle 1 there, huh? Man, that is nice. And then Walter asks, do you do frame stacking to eliminate noise? Heard it's similar to HDR merge, but used for noise. Yes. Yeah, I stack a lot of frames. I use a separate stacking software called ASTAP or OSTAP. OSTAP. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's ASTAP, where it stacks your images and aligns them. And it's specifically for astrophotography. But it does more than just stacking and aligning. It gives you star counts. It gives you quality. It tells you the temperature from the EXIF data. It gives you a lot of like additional data that you would use specifically for astrophotography, and it helps you to organize and sort the 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 frames that you captured so that you can get the best image possible. Uh, Affinity has a stacking algorithm or feature for astrophotography as well, where it does the same thing. And it's extremely fast. Actually, it's like 10 times faster than ASTAP. But the results are half as good, so to speak, right? It doesn't do as good a job in the stacking and reducing noise. Um, so everybody uses some specialized software like DSS is popular, ASTAP is popular, and then there's paid software like Pixel Insight, Serial, I can't pronounce it, Serial, something like that. That is very popular too, and it's also free, and it gets very good results. And I think has some other features like um, it actually can look up a database of what the actual colors are of certain nebulas, for example. So it looks up the true color of the nebula and then adjust your image to match the true color. Because, in your cameras, when you start stacking images together, even before you start stacking, your camera's color might be off, right? The color science is not exactly right for astrophotography. So and then especially when you start stacking the images, that variance in color can be even more. It can shift to blue or purple or yellow. The color can shift when you start stacking, hundreds of images, for example. And the serial will actually has a database that it looks up and through the cloud and calibrates your images to the correct color as well. So there's a lot of reasons to use dedicated astrophotography type software for stacking. Even though Affinity has it, it's limited and the results are not as good because it doesn't go as in depth as as a dedicated software would. And then there's paid software. Like I said, I think it's a couple $100. Pixel Insight that has an easy to use interface, is fully featured, does everything of everything, you know. Um, but I'm not going to buy that. The ASTAP that I'm using gets me virtually the same quality results, but the interface is not as good. It's a little sloppy where to do things. You know how it is, right? With software. But it's free and it does a good job. So, but it's frame stacking, but there's not only frame stacking, there's you capture dark frames, you capture bias frames, and then you capture flats. You capture a lot of different kinds of frames at different temperatures, right? They have to be at the right temperature as well in terms of the actual temperature of your sensor in your camera to calibrate noise, different types of noise. Um, so beyond just stacking your light images, which is basically the image of the stars, you stack 100 of those, you might stack another 40 or 50 dark frames, another 40 or 30 flat darks, and then another few hundred lights or bias or frames. There's a lot of stacking involved to eliminate noise. And then after you do all of that, you have to process the hell out of them. You got to sit there with sliders and build layer upon layer upon layer in Photoshop. I got one image that I took a final stack image and I ended up with like 20 layers before I got to a final image. It's like, oh my God, it's just, it's crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy how much work has to be done. You spend 3 hours capturing an image, you spend another three, not just hours, but 3, 4 days sometimes capturing the bias and flats and darks, right? Uh, Ben has hundreds of folders of flats and darks, and I mean, because he has different cameras, different lenses, and you have to calibrate them to the lens and the camera. Sometimes that doesn't matter. It's just crazy, crazy how much has to go into it. And then now I'm lost. My brain is gone. My brain is mush now thinking about it all. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as I can for now, right? Because I'm just getting started. I'm only doing lights and darks, and I can't even get my darks right. I can't even get my darks right because I don't know. I'm not doing something right in the software, and it's not matching up. And I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure if I have the right temperatures captured. So yeah, it's huge. So yeah, I definitely enjoy it. I enjoy the process, uh, and what I'm learning through the process as much as the results. So astrophotography for me right now is learning how to do it is just as much fun for me as the final result. And when we talk about artistic pleasure or the final result, do I get satisfaction from that? Yeah, it's very rewarding because I enjoyed learning the process of getting to that point as well. So the whole thing is I'm enjoying the whole thing, the process of capturing and learning everything and then getting the final result. It's huge. It's so big, but it's a kind of photography. It's a challenge, right? It's a new challenge in photography that I've never even attempted really before. And we're talking about just visible light. We're not even talking about the narrow band stuff that Ben does. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of frowning a little bit, but it's only because it's so daunting to think about the kind of gear and filter, because then you have to get into filters or specialized cameras. I think Randy has a camera ready to go, actually, a broad spectrum camera, modified. And then you start putting filters on that for specific frequencies, right? To capture specific objects, because there are objects in the sky, but you can't capture them with your camera unless you modify them and then use filters on top of that. And God knows what else on the technical side needs to be done to capture those. I don't know. Maybe there's nothing more to it than there is for regular light. But I'm talking about standard visible light type objects that is taking like a ton of work to just get a decent image. But I'm really happy with those images I got so far. They're not bad. The last couple, the Orion and the Horsehead Nebula or North American Nebula, were okay. Just okay, and downright awful if you want to talk about in comparison to what other people can do with the same gear and equipment, but their experience level is up here, right? I'm still down here in the dirt and the mud in terms of experience. And but yeah. Oh my God, a new video card works in your 8-year-old laptop. You're really stretching that laptop, huh? I didn't know you could change video cards in it. I mean, I know there's some white box or white label laptops that you can change parts inside like a video card, but I didn't. But you're not going to buy a Dell and change the video card in it. Yeah, this is something. Milky Way with live comp is fun. Yeah, I haven't seen the Luminous channel, but definitely using high res stacking and camera, I can see the benefits of that. Just for fun stuff, right? You don't have to spend all night to get a shot. You can just, you're done in like 30 seconds, right? With a lot of stuff. Yeah, boutique laptops. I call them white box, or white label. White label, meaning you just. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Boutique. Maybe boutique is the new way they talk about it. It's not much Astro photos for Mac. I didn't know that. You can choose lights and darks. Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Because I know Affinity I've never used it, but I know Affinity has that for Astro, and it's very fast, is what I hear. But I've also seen the results, and I've heard they were not as good as, say, Astap. But I don't know. I have to try for myself and see. Maybe at my level of capturing, Affinity's fine. I'll have to try with the images I have already, because I do have lights and darks. I don't have any bias frames yet, but that's interesting. Or that's good to know, I should say. Yeah, Ben would know about how to use a full spectrum for Astro, because then you have to put narrowband filters on it. I believe that's how it works. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's how it works. But okay, everyone, I think I'll call it here. I really appreciate you coming in and joining me today. It's always good to see everyone. I will be back next week, Sunday. Maybe I'll talk about the photo jobs I'm doing this week, next week, after I finish them and process them. I haven't done. They want me to do something a little bit different. I'll talk about it next week. Maybe I'll see if I can do it. I may not even be able to do what they're asking me to do, but we'll see. I'll talk about that next week. So thanks for coming in today. We'll see you again soon.